Have you ever felt completely torn between two choices? You know, that feeling of being pulled in opposite directions at the same time? Well, it's a totally universal human experience. So today, we're going to dive into some ancient wisdom from the Bhagavad Gita that gives us a powerful blueprint for navigating these very modern, very real inner battles.
In the Gita, the whole story revolves around this huge, epic war on a battlefield called Kurukshetra. But here's the thing. The text is telling us that this is really a profound metaphor for our own lives. The idea is that every single moment is our own personal Kurukshetra. Life is constantly throwing choices at us, and the standpoint from which we make those choices, well, that's what determines who we become.
And this leads us to the absolute core challenge that the Gita is trying to help us with. It's a question every single one of us faces in those really tough moments. When you're standing at a crossroads, how do you know if your choice is coming from your highest self, from a place of true alignment, or if it's just your ego, your desires and fears, wearing a really clever disguise?
I mean, choosing between good and evil, that's often pretty straightforward, but this ancient wisdom points to something deeper. It suggests our true character is really forged in a different kind of fight. Those moments when we have to choose between two competing rights, two values that we hold dear that are in direct conflict with each other. Just think about it in your own life. Have you ever felt that pull between following your passion versus, paying the bills and meeting your responsibilities? Or maybe that tough choice between what's best for your immediate family and what's best for your community, or even your country. These are our modern-day Kurukshetras. These are the moments where we have to decide when to be compassionate and when it's time for tough, firm action. So, the big question is, how do we navigate this battlefield? Well, the Gita doesn't just lay out the problem. It actually offers a solution. In chapter 16, it gives us this incredible set of divine qualities that act like a compass, a blueprint to guide us toward a much more harmonious and integrated life.
The Sanskrit term for this is Deva Sampad. And look, these aren't just some abstract pie-in-the-sky virtues to admire from a distance. The Gita presents them as a really practical framework for being. They're a set of qualities we can actually actively cultivate inside ourselves to completely change how we experience the world.
So let's take a look at some of these foundational qualities. We've got fearlessness, and that's not the absence of fear, but the courage to act despite it. There's purity of heart, self-control, and candor, which is that kind of sincerity where what you think, say, and do are all in alignment. And of course, truth and a deep, universal compassion for all beings. This is really the bedrock of a transformed consciousness. And then, building on that foundation, we get these more subtle, more advanced qualities. Take gentleness, for example. It's not presented as weakness, but as a sign of incredible underlying strength. Then you have modesty, fortitude, and a complete absence of pride. These point to a much deeper state of being, where the ego's grip has really, truly started to loosen. Okay, so knowing these qualities is one thing, but how do we actually bring them into our day-to-day lives? This is where the theory becomes practice. Let's explore 3 simple but incredibly profound daily practices that come straight from these teachings. Here they are, plain and simple. First, remember and offer. Second, respond, don't react. And third, live for a greater cause. And you'll see, these aren't complicated rituals. They're basically shifts in awareness that you can start practicing literally any moment of your day. This first practice is all about reframing your entire day. It doesn't matter what you're doing, writing an email, having a tough conversation, or even just washing the dishes. You can take a tiny, momentary pause and consciously offer that action to something bigger than yourself, to the divine, to the greater good, whatever that means for you. It's exactly like training a muscle. The more you do it, the more it becomes second nature. And this just brilliantly illustrates the power of that simple practice. This is a quote from someone who was feeling deeply conflicted between pursuing their passion and the need to support their family. And they said that through the daily practice of offering their actions, those two seemingly separate paths just unexpectedly began to merge into a life of real integrated purpose. How amazing is that?
All right, the second practice is all about mastering your impulses. See, a reaction is automatic. It's conditioned, almost like a reflex. But a response is conscious. It means creating a tiny space, a pause, between what happens to you and how you act. And in that little gap, that's where you have the freedom to choose a response that lines up with those divine qualities we were just talking about.
This quote from a teacher is just a perfect example of this in action.
Instead of reacting to all the pressure of exams and grades, she learned to respond from a place of joy in the process itself. She found her fulfillment not in the external result, but in the shared experience of learning with her students. That's the shift right there, from reaction to response. Now that third practice, living for a greater cause, is rooted in this incredibly powerful Sanskrit concept, loka sangraha. It literally means world welfare, or holding the world together. It's the principle of acting not for personal profit, not for recognition, but for the well-being of the whole.
And to really understand Loka Sangraha, there is no more powerful, heart-wrenching example than Dr. Janis Korczak. He was an educator running an orphanage for Jewish children during World War II. He was given a chance to escape the Nazis. He refused it. He chose to stay with his children, walking hand in hand with them all the way to the gas chambers. That is Loka Sangraha in its most profound, unforgettable form, a life lived completely for others.
So what happens when we actually engage in these practices consistently? What's the result? Well, it's not just about having a calmer life. It's a fundamental transformation of our entire way of being.
You can really see the transformation here. It's a shift from reaction to response. From being driven by external outcomes, like praise or money, to being guided by a deep inner purpose. You stop needing to seek validation from other people because you find that fulfillment within yourself. And your stability no longer depends on what's happening around you. It comes from a solid, unshakable inner center.
Ultimately, the goal of this whole journey is a shift in your center of gravity. You start to move away from that endless, exhausting chase for outer fulfillment, and you begin to live from this natural, effortless state of inner ease. In Jainism, they have a beautiful word for this, sahaj. It's a state where doing the right thing isn't a struggle anymore. It just flows naturally from who you are.
Now, I know this might all sound like a monumental task, like a huge mountain to climb, but the journey starts small. The source material shares this beautiful insight. Even if you only manage to practice that remember and offer habit for just 1% of your day, that consistent effort is an incredibly powerful, transformative start. It's really about progress, not perfection.
So as we wrap this up, let's make it really personal. Looking back at that list of qualities, fearlessness, compassion, truth, gentleness, which one of those speaks to you right now, in this moment? What one divine quality will you choose to consciously cultivate in your own life, starting today? Because that entire battlefield of Kurukshetra, it can be transformed by that single conscious choice.